Welcome to the Transforming Healthcare Coaching Podcast, where we bring you guidance and coaching perspectives so that you can level up in your life and work. I'm super excited to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Erika Yates, who worked as a nurse prior to going into leadership in healthcare. She practiced for over 20 years as a nurse and then 15 years in leadership. And now she's been an executive business coach, consultant, and speaker for people in business, healthcare, and a wide variety of industries. She's the founder and CEO of Enhance Enterprises, where she helps businesses with executive coaching and consulting. I was wondering, Dr. Yates, would you be willing to tell us a little bit about how your journey to coaching started?
Did my certification to be an executive coach in 2018 just to benefit myself. I had a team of over 200 staff members at the time, and I just really wanted to understand myself better and be able to support them. So now I'm on my journey. A year ago, I completely left my role and started my own company to, like yourself, help the providers and the culture setters and give them the support that they need to be able to do what they do and impact the front line. So I love this platform and I'm excited for today's topic.
Yeah, and I'm so excited to have you, Dr. Yates, just because of all the things I've already seen you do in terms of inspiring and actually getting the message out to nursing leaders, especially nursing executives. Healthcare really has had its struggles these days post-pandemic, especially with nursing staffing and all the issues to keep our workforce healthy and adequate and safe. I'm wondering, what are some of the common challenges you hear about as you coach for executives in healthcare?
So one of the biggest trends, I was actually reading a McKinsey report that came out late last year, and a lot of women leaders are really switching their jobs right now at the highest rate we've ever seen. Some of you may be surprised by this, some of you aren't, but it is quite alarming. And these are women leaders, these are healthcare leaders, and this is really a national, unfortunate trend that we're seeing throughout the different specialties. And one of the things that I've been seeing, especially post pandemic, but even 2 or 3 years before, was this burnout. We've been talking about burnout in healthcare for even prior to the pandemic, caregiver burnout. And that's just, I think, taken a toll, especially on women leaders and women executives, and especially those that are hybrid, being a physician leader or a nurse leader and dealing clinically with their team. It really has taken a huge toll, and we've seen just a huge exit in healthcare professionals completely from the profession or in different capacities.
And I think that's the greatest loss, right? I think the hard thing is that part of it, some people could argue, it's part of the normal cycle of someone's career, but to accelerate this to the point where I'm not sure that after investing a decade, well, at least a decade of our early lives, sacrificing and waiting many things in our lives to actually finally get into our positions as healthcare clinicians, whether it be a physician, a nurse, a respiratory therapist, the trajectory and the sustainability of a career is not, I think, what people expect, and I think that's the hardest thing, 15, 20 years in, for them people to worry about whether they can sustain the pace of their personal life and their well-being and also be able to lead a team. And I think that's the greatest detriment.
Yeah, and you say 15, 20 years, but I'm telling you that it's not even that long anymore. Even newer physicians and nurses coming out of practice are feeling it a couple years in and completely. It's unfortunate because they're losing their feel of purpose. You say you study 10, 15 years to even practitioners or nurses at all different levels, physicians, and then you start practicing and you are so underwhelmed for many different reasons that you start to say, why did I really do this? And not even that, they start to lose their identity because what happens is we equate so much, and I include myself, include so much of our identity with who am I? What am I doing? Erica, the nurse, Erica, the physician. That's who we are. And if we don't find purpose in what we're doing anymore, then who are we? And that's been a huge theme that I've seen in the healthcare world.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that because I also feel that coaching, after discovering this now so late in my career, I realized that moving this earlier and normalizing it, like the way it is in some businesses and some industries as well, it allows people to actually be intentional and slow down the pace of how they're being carried through their life and their career so that they can actually choose with intention what things they'll pick up, what things they won't pick up, and how to be able to craft a life that they actually want, that they actually can take on more than one identity. That it is not only solely just being a healthcare clinician only as their only outlet. Because I think that is also an issue when people, especially in the pandemic, when certain disciplines had lulls in their throughput or had issues with their retention or had to retrain or move to a different area, right, in the height of the pandemic, in order to serve like what the entire building had become a big COVID unit. And then to transition back, huge amounts of transition in a short 3-year window was not something I think any of us really trained for, right? I think in training, we think we're going to become a subspecialist in our particular area of field, and we're good, and we're going to stay there, and it's just going to stay hunky dory forever. And the degree of upheaval, I think all of us have had to be pliable and to expand our capacity and expand our thinking for how we might show up for each other in healthcare has been some of the greatest stressors, of which actually a coach helps with.
I agree. When you're dealing with 60+% of physicians dealing with burnout actively, having emotional exhaustion, being unhappy with work life balance, being stretched because they've been put into situations that they just didn't think that they were going to be in. How do you come back from that? And I think that's where coaches really help as an objective party, help kind of align some of our teams again, because there's so much emotional exhaustion, first and foremost, that we have to get back to how do we align ourselves again with the things that are really important to us? What are we passionate about? What do we want more of? And those are conversations that start sparking hope and happiness and realignment. And those are the conversations that need to happen more and more to get back to a place of being caregivers and having the energy to do that.
Completely agree. I'm curious, when you're coaching with your executives leadership in healthcare, their issues with supply chain and staffing and the morning reports on the status of how things are going level or even the building or the division level or the team level. It's hard. It's hard to manage so many people's emotions if you yourself are not extremely well, extremely fit and capable to be able to hold the exhaustion of so many people below you, right? If you think if you manage 20 people, 50 people, 100 people, what if you're an executive that manages theoretically, you're the leader for 500, 1,000 people? I can't imagine what it must be like to you yourself have to have the capacity to be able to be in that space.
That was one of the that's one of the interesting and the tough points about especially women leaders who have gone overworked and underrecognized. Statistically, many of them were at the front lines or have been at the front lines to foster employee well-being and DEI initiatives, but really haven't received the recognition that they have spent time putting in and working with their teams. It's no wonder 40+% of women leaders are burnt out, including healthcare women leaders, compared to only 31% of men at the same level. So there really are several layers of issues with the different things that especially women are taking on as opposed to their male counterparts that's affecting some of the trends that we're seeing.
That's a really great statistic and a really great point. I'm curious when you do encounter this as a coach, how do you support your women executive leaders in gaining the support they need and normalizing that their exhaustion is real and to move through it so that they can find their passion again?
I think one of the most important things that I do is validate their feelings and say, this is correct. This is what you're feeling. Because some of them are taught to take on so much and be so agile and stretch thin that they don't even identify that they are in a tough spot, that they are suffering burnout, that they're overwhelmed until it starts showing up in different areas in their life. So the identification one is really important, validating that they're not the only one. I think that's why it is important to bring in statistics and what's happening in the national forum, that this is an issue, that we need to do better. And I need to support them also in how to not only deal with their own emotional strength and energy and how to realign that energy so that they have enough energy for themselves and how they're showing up to their jobs, for their families, in their social spaces. So really validating what they're going through, I think is the first step, and knowing that I'm going to be their support for accountability and giving them other areas of even potentially within their job that they can look for support as well is important.
That's really great. I agree that just having a trusted, wise counsel, I feel like some of my clients have gotten to me before anything has happened, which has been really wonderful because it's so preventative to actually get a coach before, especially as you transition into a moment of leadership. If you're now entering a division chief position, and the earliest levels to begin to gain the structures and supports, just like gaining a personal trainer. I think a lot of times we don't spend the time in ourselves and we don't fill our cup, and the cup doesn't have to be huge. I think a lot of times people think, oh, I'm talking about a spa or manicure or pedicure, and it's not that. It really is even just how are you going to craft in your day something to gain centering and energy so that you have capacity for all those different realms, like you had just mentioned, both for your family, your personal life, your partners, and then also your work and your team. It is really crucial to put the oxygen mask on for yourself in some small capacity every day as a daily habit so that you can show up.
And it's such a actually a relief. I was working with one of my clients, and just for them to be able to express how suffocated they were feeling, and just being able to have somebody that they were able to relate to was so important, to say, you are going through this. You giving 150% of yourself for times 5 times 365 days and receiving 40% back. That leads to a huge deficit after a while, that it's no wonder why they're feeling burnt out and they're having these feelings of being stuck, which is a big one, or just wanting to leave healthcare altogether. Really, that's why the focus on energy is so important, because we do have to realize that we are more than just our jobs and our roles. Because if we're going to expend 150% every day in our work, what do we have left over?
Ah, so well said. I think the other thing that many women physicians wonder about is how do you actually craft more time out of the exact finite amount that you actually have? And so I'm curious whether you have any strategies as you coach your clients with thinking more expansively about time, because as you and I both know, it's a lot to some degree mindset.
It's
Mhm.
complete mindset. And I'm laughing as you say this because nobody has time, right? We have to create it. You just have to make it, because you're not going to get any more of it. You just have to allocate it wisely. And that's why I go back to, I always ask my clients what they want more of and to align it with their priorities. And their priorities should start equating with the time spent. So, doing an analysis on what are your priorities? Okay, let me see how you spend your week. And then you say, you said it was your priority, but I don't see that you're spending that time there. So it's really interesting when you actually look at how you're spending your time and what is actually your priority versus what you tell me your priorities are could be very different.
Yes. And I think it's especially challenging for women in leadership that do have many projects and many reports who report up to you. Because then the question is when you look at your week, if you color coded your time on it, are you actually going with certain periods of time where it's cyclical? You aren't really checking in once a week with whatever project or whatever subgroup or whatever team. So I think that's also a strategy to just remain present either on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis for more distant teams. The women executive leaders can look at a time audit even of who they're actually engaging with. And it doesn't even have to be a whole hour, right? I think a lot of people have gotten exhausted of the back-to-back Zoom meetings. But it doesn't really, it can honestly be, put a reminder on your calendar that you're going to do half an hour of 10-minute check-ins with certain leads that you have. And just that brief human connection, even if it's just a telephone call or a quick text, can often just be the way of checking in with a group, that making sure they're emotionally resilient, making sure that they're doing okay this week, or maybe actually just getting information from the front lines that something is not right, not going well this week. You've had other personal crises, and where you might want to be able to strategize for the following week as a fallout occurs, rather than just going through required sort of mandatory meetings, but instead to be proactive with reaching out to others.
And you touched a great point because now that we have flexible work schedules, we have flexible work locations, it really is important to have that touch base with your people because even though it could sometimes it's we're just going down, running through the line of XYZ, I have to get this done. But you never know when you could really be supporting somebody because that is also their opportunity for you to support and mentor somebody that may really need it that day. And that's how we keep tabs on how people are doing. So it really is important to maintain that check in time with your people just so that you also know what's happening because you don't know what you can fix if you don't know what's breaking at the time. So that's really important to retaining team members as well as we have very flexed work schedules and location.
Yeah, and I'm curious also from the group whether people have had run into struggles or challenges with your teams because they are so hybrid and remote now, and the corporate structures of healthcare now has made the teams much larger in terms of who you might want to check in with. And it's been harder to make friendships and harder to make alliances. Whether anyone else has any other strategies for how do you actually proactively and deliberately with intention, how do you keep your groups connected? Because I think that's the one thing we're all starving with as well, with the hybrid work in general, and multiple teams and different cultures and different institutions with video on or video off, and whether that drains you emotionally or that actually invigorates you has been very diverse across the workforce. And then I guess if you had any sort of like current pearls of wisdom for executive leaders right now, like this week, in the current state that we're in, post pandemic, into this brave new world of trying to juggle everything with continued supply chain issues and retention issues. If you had to impart some parting words of encouragement, is there anything that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think some recommendations that we should consider should be, especially as a woman in my field and a Latina woman in my field, it really is to get overall more women into leadership and retaining great women leaders. So if there's something that the check-in, recognizing individuals that continue to go above and beyond, it's more than just not just bonusing them with monetary compensation, but really have those conversations. Sometimes the check-in is all that matters and people just want to know that you understand what they're going through. So don't minimize those even 10-minute one-to-one conversations and acknowledgments to those that are really going above and beyond.
My only encouragement to everyone is to make sure you care for yourself first every morning so that you can show up as your best self as you enter into the workspace and the clinical arena. And then also find ways to take breaks in the middle of the day. Mental health, your mental resilience and your mental strength starts with you first. And if that means in the car to take another 3 breaths before you enter into the room, I think many of us have heard about the hand washing meditation, just to take the moment and just to recenter every time you go into a new engagement, and to be curious, be curious and be able to recognize you do have capacity. We've been through some amazingly difficult things in the last 2 years. If you're still here somehow in the game of healthcare, then you actually do have the capacity to be an amazing leader, a clinician, and advocate for others. So I also want to give a chance for Dr. Gates, if you have any information on how to work with you one-on-one or any of your programs, just want to give you a chance to put a plug in.
Yes, absolutely. So my website is www.enhance-coaching.com. You can direct message me on LinkedIn. I will post information on some webinars. I will be doing some informational seminars with and some collaborations that are coming up. So excited about really helping not only my one-to-one clients, but different individuals in a supportive and educational forum.
Great. And then you could direct message either of us, and feel free to please offer us any suggestions for topics for the future. We want to tailor these for questions or things that would be useful to you. And so feel free to direct message me so that we can actually find speakers and also make sure that your questions are discussed in a forum that is supportive. Both Dr. Yates and myself recognize that if we don't fill the cups of our executives, our mid-level managers, and our frontline team leaders, that it's no wonder that we're not able to feel well at the end of a shift. Both of us trained at the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching, where we both have a philosophy about the vast potential inside everyone. And we also both practice energy leadership, and we are excited to partner together for today.
Yes, this is exciting, and I'm hoping that all of you utilize your best influence to promote change and positivity.
Thank you so much for listening to the Transforming Healthcare Coaching podcast. If you found this episode interesting or useful, please share it with your friends and colleagues in healthcare. And we will love it if you hit subscribe so that you never miss an episode. We want to help with the topics and problems that you want us to talk about. Leave us a review wherever you listen to us with suggestions, feedback, and praise. It means so much to us, and we actually read every comment. For deeper support in your life and work as a healthcare professional and leader, head over to transforminghealthcarecoaching.com. Download our free 5 reflection questions to jumpstart your journey and join our email list to be the first to know about our coaching programs. We're also excited to offer the MedThrive community, a supportive space for group coaching and self-paced personal growth, providing an alternative path to growth beyond one-on-one coaching programs. Find out more and join this thriving community at transforminghealthcarecoaching.com. Together, we can transform healthcare, one person at a time.